Tail of the tape, episode number 7 on deck for you guys. We are closing out a trio of Ohio State Buckeyes with Quinshon Judkins, running back from Ohio State. The national champions had a 6-foot, 221-pound running back in tandem with Treveyon Henderson, born October 29th, 2003. He is 21.5 years old, will not turn 22 until, week 9 of the NFL season. Background information on Quinshon Judkins, high school to college. Unlike a lot of the prospects I've talked about so far, Judkins was not a highly decorated recruit. He was a 3-star prospect coming out of high school from Pike Road, Alabama. Had an impressive college career, especially coming in as a 3-star. Nothing given to you, and in his freshman season, basically from week 1, he outperforms a 5-star running back in Zach Evans, who was a junior at the time, expected to go high in the NFL draft. And Judkins starts over him, wins SEC Freshman of the Year as an 18-year-old true freshman coming in as a 3-star. When you look at game logs and his profile development over the course of his 3-year collegiate career, like I said, comes in and starts as a true freshman, 1,500 yards, 16 rushing touchdowns, and yet there's some people in the community going, I don't know if this guy's talented because of his missed tackles forced, blah, blah, blah. I'll get into that later. As a sophomore, he has a rather inefficient year, I would say, 4.3 yards per carry. Couldn't find much about him dealing with injuries or anything, so I'm not going to blame it on he was banged up that year. He did have a hand procedure midway through the 2024 season, but it looks like he was just, for whatever reason at Ole Miss, not playing super well. He then transfers into Ohio State for the 2024 season. Obviously, that worked out well for the Buckeyes. They win the national championship, and of course, splits a backfield with other top 4 running back prospect for me, Treveyon Henderson. He has 1,000 yards, 5.5 yards per carry, 14 rushing touchdowns, and a career best 26 targets with 1.13 yards per out run through the air. So really solid prospect all 3 years, early declare, super young still. Reached a top speed of 22.5 in-game miles per hour per Real Analytics on a long run against Kentucky in 2023. We know this guy's a great athlete. We saw what happened at the Combine, but let's get into the tape before we talk about that athleticism. Biggest strengths of Quinshon Judkins' game for me, and this is a subjective quality, so obviously some people may disagree with this, but to me, I think he has the best vision, the best patience, the best instincts of any running back in this class, maybe outside of Ashton Jeanty. He's just so refined as a runner, and what I appreciate most about Quinshon Judkins is this. He ran primarily a gap running role at Ohio State this year because Treveyon Henderson, a little bit more explosive. He got the glory touches. He was the one on the outside zone carries, the receptions. He was the change of pace running back this year, and Judkins played his role beautifully. It resulted in lower missed tackles force numbers, lower yards after contact per attempt. When you're doing the dirty work, you're the one going up the middle, up the gut on a 3rd and 3 trying to get the first down, but that's what he was asked to do. And then when you look at what he did at Ole Miss, he was the dude there. He got a lot more of those glory touches, more varied looks in addition to the gap runs that he saw at Ohio State. He was running a lot more zone runs, RPOs, and he was actually much more efficient, especially in that 2022 season. But even in the down 2023 season, he forced a missed tackle on 28.1% of his runs in 2023. And then in 2024, when he was basically just a gap scheme runner or, asked to do the dirty work at Ohio State, he still ranked top 16 in the country in EPA per attempt on zone carries. So you're looking at a guy that you do kind of have to Frankenstein his profile and his efficiencies a little bit because of what he was asked to do. But like I said, he had very good efficiencies at Ole Miss, and you can piecework it together at Ohio State on the touches that do usually result in a lot of missed tackles forced. And for what it's worth too, when you have like a 26% missed tackles force rate over your career, and a lot of the time you were forcing missed tackles against DNs, DTs, and linebackers, that's more impressive to me than a guy who just gets a bunch of space touches and makes a lot of cornerbacks miss, because cornerbacks don't tackle very well, neither do safeties. So all of this to say, on Quinshon Judkins, he's not even 22 years old yet, and he ran against big boy NFL caliber competition at 2 ranked programs at Ohio State and in the SEC with Ole Miss, and he won SEC Freshman of the Year. He knows how to run the football. He knows when to set up a block, how to hit a backside cut, take what's there when you have to, diagnose any run concept that's thrown at him, tempo his speed, be patient, and the 0 to 10 yard burst when he does hit a hole is spectacular for a 220-pound back, and we'll talk about that when we get to his athleticism. Strength number 2, toughness, power, contact balance. He is a menace. He finishes his runs. He has a nasty stiff arm. He bulldozes defenders at the goal line. Always runs with excellent pad level, which basically just means that he runs with good fundamentals, runs low to the ground, very difficult to tackle on the first contact. The issue I had in this area with Judkins, which doesn't give him like a perfect grade necessarily in contact balance, is that he does sometimes lose his footing a little bit. So more balanced drills, like I don't know if you guys remember when Kamara was at his peak, he used to do all these drills where he's like standing on an exercise ball, juggling tennis balls or whatever. I do think that Judkins could work on his balance just a little bit, and that would probably do him some good. But when you look at the metrics in this area, he broke a tackle on 12.64% of his runs in 2024. And again, keep in mind that was primarily against DTs, DNs, and linebackers when he got those carries. But then when you look back at his freshman season, he broke a tackle on 19% of his carries, which was a top 5 mark in the country that year. You have to dig a little bit deeper with Judkins. You can't just look at, oh wow, only 3.23 yards after contact per attempt in his career. Bad contact balance. No, you got to watch the tape, fellas. You see it. It's much more evident when you contextualize what his role was at Ohio State. Strength number 3, we get into his size, his goal line ability, his ability in short yardage. The dude is an absolutely rocked up, 6 foot tall, 221 pounds. That is workhorse size. At the combine, he ripped up 24 reps at 225, so you know how strong this guy is weight room strength-wise. In short yardage, he absolutely fried defenses. He ranked 8th in this class with a 0.330 EPA per play in short yardage with 3 or less yards to go to gain a first down or a touchdown. 3rd in the class in 2023 at Ole Miss in that same metric, and he led the country with 78 short yardage attempts as a true freshman. So this is a dude that an NFL coaching staff is going to get into their offense and hand the ball on the goal line, in the red zone, in short yardage, which of course are high value fantasy touches for us playing fantasy football. His 1.12 touchdowns per game in his career, he had at least 14 rushing touchdowns every year of his career, was 2nd in the class behind only Ashton Jeanty among Power 5 running backs, and Jeanty not even a Power 5 running back himself. Tracking his rushing touchdown market share, you guys can see if you put him up against some of the better like big backs that we've seen come out, he stacks up really well among the likes of Jonathan Taylor, Leonard Fournette, Derrick Henry, actually the best freshman season of all of those guys, with Judkins among those guys. As a sophomore, he was up there right with Leonard Fournette. And then as a junior, again, he was splitting a backfield with a very talented back in Treveyon Henderson, but he was still ahead of Fournette, just behind Jonathan Taylor. And of course, Derrick Henry had a monster junior season. When you look at success rate inside the 10-yard line among running backs in this class, he ranked 7th with a 70% success rate inside the 10-yard line. And keep in mind, he had way more attempts inside the 10-yard line than a lot of these other guys like a Dylan Sampson or a Raheem Sanders or some of these other dudes. He also, when you look at like durability factor and why he would be trusted with a big workload, he handled 2 300-touch workloads freshman and sophomore year immediately, right? You don't usually get big workloads that early in your college career. And he never missed any games. He was able to hold up with that kind of workload. Next, let's get into strength number 4, which is elusiveness. And this is the one metric that everybody irritates me when we talk about Quinshon Judkins, because the narrative when you box score scout is that he doesn't make people miss that much, because this season he only had, I think, a 23% missed tackles force rate or an 18% missed tackles force rate, which is not very good. But when you take his career number, because like I said, at Ole Miss, he had a different role. Since 2016, in the FSC prospect model, his career mark of 26.3% missed tackles force per attempt is in the top 17 among running backs of over 220 pounds. That is a 71st percentile mark, one spot behind Amari and Hampton at 27.1%. And he also never gets really any shit for not making people miss. Even if you sort by all 227 running backs since 2016, that mark ranks in the 65th percentile. And his elusiveness rating in the 52nd percentile. Like I said, his role at Ohio State dragged this number down. If you just look at his Ole Miss numbers, it was 29.48%, which would have ranked 7th among 58 running backs of over 220 pounds, since 2016, or in the 88th percentile. So this dude can make people miss. I really don't want to hear that he doesn't make people miss, because frankly, if you think he can't, you're just not watching the film. I graded 2024 versus Oregon, Penn State, and Iowa, and then 2023 against LSU, 2022 against Vanderbilt, and every single game I watched him, I'm like, yeah, this guy can make people miss. It was a non-issue for me, even though the metrics kind of tell you otherwise, because of what his role was specifically at Ohio State. So again, I get the metrics aren't very good in this area, but you got to contextualize it with the film and make sure that you can kind of see, especially when you factor in how good of an athlete this guy is. You're telling me he can't make somebody miss with 99th percentile athleticism? I just frankly don't buy that. So strength number 5, for me, this might be, again, a bit of a hot take on Quinshon Judkins, but I think he is an underrated receiver. Is he Christian McCaffrey? Absolutely not. But he had an underrated spike in usage as a receiver this year. 2024 at Ohio State, he was 4th in the class with 18.2% targets per route run, 5th in the class with a 72.3 PFF receiving grade, and the guys that he's among are all just like pure receiving backs, like a Woody Marks or a LaQuint Allen. He can develop into a better, route runner for sure, but just get this guy in space, man. The receiving ability is that of like a Joe Mixon, a Zeke Elliott, or a Leonard Fournette. Obviously, big back, primarily going to be good on the ground, but you can add in 60, 70, 80 targets if he can develop in this area. His 0.35 receiving yards per team pass attempt ranked in the 64th percentile among running backs of his stature, 220 plus pounds. And remember, he was also sharing backfields with better receivers like Zach Evans and Treveyon Henderson throughout his college football career. So speaking of his production profile, it's really strong. The easy way to sum it up, from a talent standpoint, we've known this guy was one of the best running backs in college football since week 1 of his freshman season, even though he was a 3-star college recruit. Can you poke holes in his profile? Yes, he's a great back. His comps were guys who also had backfields to themselves, RB1 upside prospects like Rashad Penny, Derrick Henry, Zach Charbonnet, J.K. Dobbins, and Darius Geis. All of these dudes, RB1 upside prospects, peak as RB1s in Dynasty over 80% of the time. Top 5 running backs in Dynasty value 53% of the time, and you get an RB1 season production-wise out of these guys 64% of the time. So we're talking about an extremely strong profile. Athleticism-wise, just an absolute freak. 99th percentile relative athletic score, 5'11 and a half, 221 pounds, 24 reps at 225, 4.48 in the 40-yard dash. His 10-yard split also very, very solid, and that 20-yard split very solid as well. 38 and a half vertical, 11-foot broad jump, which is 99th percentile, not including how big he is, again. And then when you look at the in-game athleticism, his in-game athleticism score per Real Analytics is in the 95th percentile, max speed in the 95th percentile. And again, speaking of the elusiveness point, his transition time, so his ability to kind of throttle down, make people miss, in the 83rd percentile in-game athleticism. So this dude's an absolute freak show, very productive for a long time. I'm kind of surprised that he's being overthought by a lot of people. When you look at some of the weaknesses, because there are some on film for him, the biggest knock on him is the metrics don't love him. Missed tackles forced, yards after contact, that kind of stuff. But again, got to contextualize it, so I already talked about that. Weakness number 2, and the biggest weakness that I saw from him, was pass protection. Definitely a work in progress, just a 95.3 efficiency mark as a pass protector and a 47.9 PFF pass blocking grade. Only 171 reps total. He's still a very young player, still needs to learn this. But he did allow 15 total pressures in his college football career on those 171 reps, which is not a very good pressure rate allowed. It's really hard to be a good pass protector when you don't get the reps, especially this year, because treveyon Henderson, of course, is a great pass protector, and he got those reps instead of Quinshon Judkins, which I think was the right decision by the Ohio State coaching staff. Use that frame, clean defenders, get a little bit deeper, because when he sets too high and he loses leverage, and he's got the size to be able to hold up in pass protection. So for me, it's more about repetitions, coaching, what he can do at the next level. The other red flag with his profile is that he did peak as a freshman, and sometimes that can be a bad thing. Think about a guy like Tank Bigsby. Took a little bit of time to develop at the NFL level because he did, in fact, peak as a freshman. But the silver lining is this. So did his teammate, treveyon Henderson, and nobody seems to hold that against him, that he peaked as a freshman. And we've also seen a number of great prospects have their best season as freshmen as well. Nick Chubb had his best season as a freshman. Jonathan Taylor had his best season as a freshman. Todd Gurley has his best season as a freshman. The important thing is that he did it. You'd still like to see more improvement throughout the college career, but Quinshon Judkins, that great freshman season is not a knock on him. It's obviously a great thing that he had that good of a season at 18 years old. When you talk about the final grade, I have an 87.5 on Quinshon Judkins out of 100. You can see I'm a little bit higher on Judkins than Danny is, and this is precisely about the same grade that I have on Amari and Hampton. Comparisons and fits, my comp for him is Todd Gurley. And Todd Gurley, of course, had a great freshman season just like Quinshon Judkins. I think Gurley was definitely a more developed receiver coming out of Georgia, but Judkins and Gurley both have this innate sense, A, to see holes, to anticipate holes, great vision, great patience, but what they do in the red zone, what they do in short yardage is where this comp came from. And they're also basically identical athletically, size-wise. And of course, we didn't get testing for Gurley, but when you watch the tape, he looks like he's about the same athletic level as Quinshon Judkins. I also considered using a Joe Mixon as the comp. The model likes Rashad Penny, J.K. Dobbins, and Darius Geis. So any one of those comps, I think on the very, very low end, we're talking about like Tank Bigsby plus kind of thing with Quinshon Judkins. But regardless, he's an awesome player. NFL mock draft database expected draft capital for Quinshon is 53rd overall. I think anywhere in that early second round is probably where he's going to go. A couple of fits that make some sense. You have the Browns picking at 33. They could go with a running back, although they might be taking quarterback or trading back into the first round. The Raiders at 37 make a lot of sense because his former college coach Chip Kelly is there. The Bears at 39 or 41 would make sense. Ben Johnson could maybe use some size in that backfield, who's got a little bit more juice than Roschon Johnson. Maybe he wants him to be like his David Montgomery. The Cowboys at 44 make just perfect sense. Use him in the James Conner role that they're bringing in that scheme to that team. Bengals at 49 would make some sense, although that would be RIP to Chase Brown. Broncos at 51 would be absolutely glorious. I think he would fit that kind of like Mark Ingram mold that Sean Payton has had. The Chargers at 55 would be good. The Texans at 58 would be good. The Commanders and Chiefs at the end of round 2 would be good. So many great options there, but my absolute favorites would definitely be the Raiders at 37, Cowboys at 44, or Broncos at 51. But all of those landing spots would have Judkins be a very, very highly sought-after asset in fantasy drafts. What I would do with him in rookie drafts right now, if you guys are wondering where should I take this guy, where does he rank, this is probably a my guy for me. You guys probably can tell by this point in the video that I'm really high on Quinshon Judkins relative to the rest of consensus. He is my RB2 in the class as of now, but although him and Amari and Hampton have basically the same grade, so whatever guy gets the better landing spot, the better draft capital, will probably end up being ahead for rookie draft purposes. And it looks like right now Hampton's expected to go in the first round, Judkins expected to go in the second round, so post-draft they probably will flip for me. Judkins is my 105 from a talent standpoint in Superflex. If you include Travis Hunter, who's my 102, he would be my 104 if Hunter plays cornerback at the next level. And then in one quarterback, he'd be my 104, 103 without Travis Hunter. I will definitely not have to draft him that high. And that's the great thing about rookie drafts is you don't need to outsmart the market. You just need to manipulate the market. If I think Judkins is the 104 or the 105 in rookie classes and he goes 108 off the board, then guess what? I'm not going to take him at 105 if I don't have to. I'm going to trade down, pick up, let's say, the 203 and a 26 second to move down from 103 to 106 to take Quinshon Judkins. That's what I will do. That's what we always encourage you guys to do. Do your due diligence, manipulate the draft board. If you really want Quinshon Judkins at 103, there's no reason to try and outsmart your league mates and take him that high. If he doesn't go 103, trade down to a point where he does go and make sure you secure that. And that's what I will be doing, especially anytime I'm on the board and Amari and Hampton is expected to be the pick for a lot of people. I'll trade down because I view Hampton and Judkins very similar and pick up some draft capital when possible. I will do that all day because I believe I'm getting a top 10 dynasty running back with Quinshon Judkins. Prayers up for a good landing spot for him. Although, like I said, for Igbuka, if he actually gets a bad landing spot, I wouldn't totally hate it because I'll get a lot of picks of him, in that 109 to 112 range if he doesn't have a great landing spot. So that is Quinshon Judkins. Of course, one of my favorite prospects in this entire class, and him and Emeka Igbuka, the last two that I've done, are definitely two of my favorite prospects in the class. If you guys enjoyed, leave a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Right now, you guys are watching this. I've recorded this a couple days in advance because I will actually be in New York when you guys are watching this, probably midweek, of the 13th, 14th, 15th area. But we are doing a BDG trivia tournament, so make sure you guys are subscribed to BDG trivia channel because me, Danny, and Mason will be competing in that as we speak or as you guys are watching this. So definitely check that out. Of course, if you guys want all of our Dynasty rookie rankings, all of our Superflex, one quarterback startup rankings, all of our rookie draft guide content, 65 plus players in the draft guide written up, graded, comps, strengths, weaknesses, all that good stuff, prospect model stuff in the draft guide. spread this year as well. Head on over to flockfantasy.com. Use the promo code FSE when you sign up for 7 days for free, 6 months for free when you sign up annually, 30% off, and you get a free team review voucher when you sign up annually using the promo code FSE, which, as you guys have seen on the channel, is how you get into Dynasty Decisions episodes where me and Danny can sit down, diagnose your team, talk about your path to victory, your path to being an elite team in your league. If that interests you, hit the link down below in the description. But with that being said, peace out, and I'll talk to you soon.